Hey guys, John Moore here, and welcome to the Texas College Football Show. Today, we're previewing the Baylor Bears of the Big 12 Conference, and joining me is Garrett Ross. He's from 365 Sports and 247 Sports. Garrett, tell us exactly what you do and how you're involved with Baylor, and you're going to come on here and preview them for us.
Yeah, so daily we do a show on 365 Sports, which is on YouTube. It is a Big 12-centric, national-centric show. We originally started out as the local radio show on 1660 ESPN, and COVID shut that down and opened up this new opportunity, which has been a blessing for all of us. And then as far as Baylor specific, I do the beat writing and cover recruiting over there on the Baylor Bears 247 site. So go check that out. And then I also help out with Mike Scarborough as well, covering some LSU recruiting for TigerBait.com.
Okay, how can they find you? How do they find you on social media or whatever?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter @_Garrett Ross. That's really about the only social media I'm on regularly.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm one of those guys who kind of stays away from it a little bit, but
Okay.
you'll see me on there.
Okay, well, listen, today we're going to break down the Baylor Bears. For everyone that doesn't know what we're doing here on this show, the Texas College Football Show, it's the Texas FBS college football teams. So there's 13 schools in the state of Texas that play FBS college football. They're eligible to go to the CFP playoffs there. Baylor being one of them, of course, being in the Big 12. I'm going to count them down every week, and then we're going to, it's going to change as we go. But we're doing a preview before the season. And for me, who knows college football well, and I'm a UT fan, and my son goes there. By the way, did you go to Baylor? Are you an alum?
No, I did not go to Baylor. I just kind of looked into this. I went to SNHU online. I was working in the medical field before this, and then kind of got into it. It's pretty awesome.
So you're like me. You love college football, got into it, started covering it, and I do it on the side. But I love doing this. I need help from guys that cover the team. I know a lot of the players, the ones that people talk about, but not all of them. And so I want to break them down with all you guys, and you cover them so you know all of it. So Baylor, first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about Baylor head coach Dave Aranda. So have you got to meet Dave? I guess you have. What do you think of Dave?
I love Dave. Like going back to his time when he was at LSU as the defensive coordinator, I think he's one of the most unique individuals we have in this game. I think he is very intelligent, and I think sometimes how he comes across to people will seem awkward, but he just thinks differently than most of us do. I think that the scenario he walked into when he took over the head coaching job was something obviously unprecedented with COVID. And he's had to navigate so many different obstacles. And I think he's starting to come into his own and find his rhythm as a head coach, which is honestly really dangerous for people across the country.
Yeah, and people that don't know that number 8 there, I did a ranking of the Texas college coaches, and no particular, I mean, it's in my order, what I think. I like Dave and what he's done. I do think we're going to get into his seat in a minute, whether we think his seat is hot or cold or whatever. But, he had a really good second year there when they took him to the Big 12 championship. I think it was at the Sugar Bowl they won that year. His second year there, he's had a couple of down years, and it's why if you look at my little coach's seat here, I did this little coach's seat chart too. I put David warm. Now, you could tell me if I'm wrong. I don't take offense to any of it. The way it do it hot is I only had one coach on a hot seat, and that's put up or else. But I had a couple of coaches on a warm seat. Another Big 12 coach in Sonny Dykes that I had on there too, where basically maybe you're not hearing it yet, but there might be some people behind the scenes that are grumbling a little bit. Where would you put Coach Aranda on this chart?
Looking right here, I would say warm is fair. I think if you went cool or warm, you couldn't go wrong with either one of those. I think it just really depends on who you're talking to around the program or fans if they're kind of frustrated with how things have gone. But for me personally, I think I would say cool. I think if you look at his kind of giving out what I laid out a while ago, all the circumstances and how everything's unfolded, he's always adapted. He's never really look for excuses. He's taken ownership of the failures, and he's adjusted with that. I think he has a great repertoire with Mac Rhodes, the AD, and I think that there's a lot of just behind the scenes things in place where you think Dave Aranda is going to be safe after this year. I give him at least one more year after this season before you really start seeing the rumblings come up.
And see, I would have really said hot, but I went down to warm because of how he finished last year. Boy, they finished strong down that stretch, and he's got a lot coming back, including his quarterback that we're going to get into in just a little bit when we start breaking down the offense and defense of it. But Cool's fair too. I could totally see that too. He's got a great reputation. What he did at LSU, he won a national championship there as a defensive coordinator before coming over to Baylor. And that was interesting. There was a lot of grumblings, if people don't remember this. Some of the players were grumbling for Joey McGuire, who was on that staff and actually was on Dave's staff for 1 year. Some of them wanted McGuire to take over that job, who's now at Texas Tech. But Dave's a good defensive guy. And let me tell you what, championship coaches that have had great long reputations as championship coaches are usually come from the defensive side of the ball.
No, they really do. And I mean, he's made so many adjustments over the years, even his philosophy with defense. He's always learning. He's done a really good job of networking with people and finding new creative ways. And he's one of those guys that he's not going to come and say, you have to learn my system. He's going to adapt to the players he has on his roster. And I think he's done a really good job this year of evaluating the right fits through the portal to bring in. That way you can just kind of go seamless with the transition and expectations of what he's establishing from a defensive mindset on that side of the ball.
Yeah. Okay. So last year, let's see what they're coming off of last year. Last year, their overall record was 8-5. They were 6-3 in the Big 12, but as we recall, that last stretch on that back stretch, they did really well. They won a lot of games in a row. Did they end with 6 straight wins?
6 regular season wins down the stretch.
Yeah, down the stretch. And look, they were all Big 12 wins. So they headed into that Big 12 bad, and that's why I think so. I think notable wins last year, obviously against Texas Tech, the 59-35. They had the win over Oklahoma State and TCU, who was, TCU was just coming into the second year being removed from playing for a national championship. For that, any other games of note you would put in there?
I think you could throw in that bowl game against LSU. I think even though it was a loss, you got to see what Baylor is capable of. I think there were some guys in that game who suffered injuries. You didn't get to see Josh Cameron play fully. You didn't have Michael Trigg out there as well. And you didn't have fully everybody available on defense. So I think you could throw that in there as well, even though they didn't win. I think that showed that the momentum they built and could catapult them to having success this season.
Okay. Well, speaking of this season, we're going to go into the offense on the offensive side of the ball. Now, before you do anything, the only position we talk of on defense or offense is going to be the quarterback, because every team is led by its quarterback. Now, I did a quarterback ranking also, the 13 quarterbacks, and some of them had battles going on, but not Baylor. Baylor's got Sawyer Robinson coming back. I had him as the number 7 quarterback on this team. Last year, I mean, let's look at the numbers from last year for Sawyer. He threw for 3,071 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. He started all 12 games. I mean, look, this guy's coming back. So that's what you want to have a winning season, is a quarterback with experience.
No, it really is. And this is the first time that Baylor hasn't entered a season with a quarterback battle in quite some time. And I think that helps with the chemistry there. The one unique thing about Sawyer is you mentioned the passing yards. And yeah, he put up over 3,000 yards. He's super efficient. But what people didn't get to see is he's a true dual threat guy. Like, he can really run the football. Unfortunately, he suffered an injury last year who really it hindered his ability to move in the pocket. But when he can go, I think you're going to see Sawyer rush for probably close to 1,000 yards this season. On top of, I wouldn't be surprised if he came close or eclipsed that 3,000 mark again. He's dynamic. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. And he's got plenty of playmakers and talent around him to fully utilize his abilities as a playmaker.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk about that nationally. He's a dark horse, maybe Heisman candidate. There's things like that happen. For Baylor, it's good. I mean, look, this is a team. I think Dave needs a good year this year. I think Baylor, look, when it comes to Texas, I believe that the best college football in the country is played in the state of Texas. I just think it is from top to bottom. Yes, the team that's probably ranked at the top, 1, 2, or 3, is also in the state of Texas, in the University of Texas. But I think the Big 12 should run through the state of Texas. There's 3 or 4 teams in the Big 12. Well, there's 5 that are Texas schools, but there's 3, I think, when you got Baylor, TCU, and Tech, that could probably there's a lot of grumblings. They might be competing for the Big 12 championship and a shot at that CFP. I certainly see Baylor as one, especially how they finished.
No, I definitely think you could throw Tech in there as well. But the unique thing with that is it's so hard to judge, especially like with the big conferences now, because none of the schedules are equal. Like you can
Yeah.
draw a really easy schedule and scoot your way through, kind of like an Indiana did last year. Or you could draw a gauntlet like an Oklahoma did in the SEC and be screwed.
Yep.
So it's kind of just depends on the fall of the schedule. But I think if you do look at it, because that was one of the exercises we did on 365 Sports this year, was throughout the offseason, we looked at every Power Four program schedule and just broke down, the flow of them. And they're interesting to see how some of those are divvied up. But yeah, going through the Big 12 schedules, I do think Baylor is in a great position to find themselves in Arlington. And Texas Tech is as well. Neither one of them play in the regular season. So if they did meet up, it would be for that Big 12 title. But you're right. I think you obviously got to look at Arizona State. They're going to be a factor in this as well. But one of the three Texas schools that you mentioned, TCU, Tech, or Baylor, I would not be surprised to see them in Arlington.
Absolutely. Now let's go back to the offensive side of the ball. Who are some returning starters or impact players that Baylor that we want to see this year coming back for Baylor?
The returning starters you got to start with is in your backfield. When you look at Bryson Washington and Dawson Pendergrass, this is the best running back duo in the Big 12, in my opinion. And it's honestly one of the best duos in the nation, given what they have. I think.
Okay, you froze there just a second. Let's see if we get Garrett going there.
Josh Cameron, getting him back.
You there, Garrett? You're freezing just a little bit there. Let's see here. Technical difficulty, guys. We'll get this going here in just a second. All right, guys, sorry about that. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty. Let's go back to the offensive side of the ball. Besides Sawyer Robinson. Sawyer Brown, that's a band. Tell us about the offensive side of the ball. Who's returning and who are some impact players?
I think when you start with the returning players, you got to start with the backfield. When you look at Bryson Washington and Dawson Pendergrass, to me, they're one of the best running back duos in the conference. And honestly, nationally, I think you'll really see that with Washington as he emerges as one of the best running backs in the nation this year. I think Josh Cameron, getting him back as your lead receiver is very important. But not only from a receiver aspect, it's what he can do in the return game from with his punt returns. He actually made Bruce Feldman's freak list today for what he's able to bring to the table. And getting Ashton Hawkins back with the NCAA eligibility issue that they had and having him cleared to play this season is you can't even put it into words how big it is for this offense, what he's going to be able to bring. And then if you look at some of the transfers that you brought in,
well, hang on. We're going to do transfer portal after we do defense, and then we'll go back and touch. When you do transfers, tell me who the new transfers are. Right now, I want returning players, and that's good there. Is that all the returning players you see?
I would say Michael Trigg. If you get Michael Trigg back as well at their tight end position, what he can bring to the table is really crucial. So you put all those pieces with Sawyer Robertson, and it's a dynamic offense.
Okay, now we're going to go to the defensive side of the ball. For now, returning starters, impact players, who do you see coming back on that? Then after that, we're going to go to the portal and recruiting and anybody that we think might impact their freshman year. But on the defensive side of the ball, that's a Dave Aranda special himself. Does he call plays on defense?
Yeah, so this will be his second season calling plays. If you look last year, that's why they got significantly better. They made some jumps for total defense. They were like in the 130s. And when they finished last season, I believe they were 81st overall in total defense. So you saw that Dave Aranda bump there. I think getting Keaton Thomas back to me is the most important player on your defense at linebacker. He's been one of my favorite Baylor players to watch grow since he came in from Mississippi Community College, and just watching how he gravitates towards Aranda and everything that he soaks in, the knowledge. It's like having Aranda's mind on the field with elite athleticism. So getting him back is important. Having Jackie Marshall be able to come back up front and be your big run gap stopper that you have returning is important. And then on the back end, you got Caden Jenkins, who to me needs to have another breakout year. I think he had a sophomore slump last year after he got a lot of hype the year before. So you need progression from him. And then having Devin Bobby on the back end as well, or some of the guys returning that you can focus on anchoring that defense.
Okay, so now let's go to the transfer portal. This is a new game. Everybody does this now. They fill spots, position. We'll go to the offensive side of the ball. Are there any transfers coming in you're excited to see that are going to help out this team?
For me, offensively, it's going to be Lewis Brown coming in at the receiver position from Colorado State. You've seen some flashes in practice of what he can bring. He's super fast. I think if you look for a guy who could take the top off of the offense, it's him. And he's really big too and has great hands. Joe Coker, having him come in on the offensive line, I think is going to add some depth there. You do bring back 4 of your 5 offensive linemen. I should have mentioned that a while ago, but having Joe Coker be able to step in, I think adds more depth to that rotation when you have Caden Siraki coming in as your younger guy there. And then Kobe Prentice, what can he bring coming over from Alabama? I'm more of a fan of guys on transfers who go bigger, little smaller school to bigger, rather than like bigger to smaller. It's not a perfect science, but I think those guys do better job of transitioning upward than going down.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. And when you see a player that emerges from either just a G5 school or even a D2 school come up to play in the big time, they do seem to shine, and they get, scouting is huge, and those guys find those guys out there and they come in. I've seen it on every level. Being a UT fan, there's some that have come in.
Jared Verse is a perfect example.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's crazy. I just love that, and I love to see that. Yes, sometimes it does take just a change of scenery for the bigger guy who coming from an Alabama, swinging over to here. That was a good recruit coming out of high school. Maybe sometimes for whatever reason the philosophy didn't work with the coach or whatever. People sometimes will jump to maybe that was a problem kid. Not necessarily. Sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle. Comes over here, and we're going to see the talent that we saw coming out of high school. And so you're exactly right. I know exactly what you mean on that. And so it could be a big find right there. Now let's go to the defensive side of the ball. So who are some transfers coming in you're excited about there?
Man, there's a ton of transfers. Like the defense is really made up mostly of transfers this year, but the ones I'm really keeping an eye on are Matthew Fobbs-White. I think coming over from Tulane, what he can bring to the edge is really important to this defense. Travion Barnes also coming over from FIU. He was one of the best defenders in the nation last year. He's one of those guys talking about like take that step up and become a crucial, vital player in this defense. I know this is going to kind of be productive to what I just said, but Calvin Simpson Hunt coming over from Ohio State. I think he defines what you were talking about in a guy who got lost in the depth chart on a really elite defense. It comes closer to home being a Waxahachie native. You're right there, 45-minute drive from home. I think getting him in this defense with Dave Aranda's mindset and knowing what he can do is a guy that I'm really focused on. And then Tyler Turner is kind of that same mindset. This is a guy who has kind of followed Matthew Pallage, who is technically the defensive coordinator, but isn't calling the plays. But he's a guy that he had his eye on when he was at Oregon, and now they're kind of reunited here in Waco. So those are some of the guys I'm looking forward to. And then one wild card, not necessarily a wild card, but Samu Tomopepe coming over from Texas A&M. This is a massive human being. So if you're able to plug the middle up with him, I think they want to look at and use him like they did Apu Ika when he came over from LSU. You're hoping to get that same type of production from Samu here, but those are some of the transfers I'm looking at on the defense.
Okay, and like you said, when we did make a point, someone gets lost. Who is it coming over from Ohio State?
Calvin Simpson Hunt.
And let me tell you what, there's also guys that like that. Maybe this guy, Calvin Simpson Hunt, who's coming over from Ohio State, where Ohio State's going to be kicking themselves, going, how do we let him slip away? And didn't do a good enough job to keep him, and they could regret it. That happens at every school. You see,
let's be real. You do want to play defense for Dave Aranda, or you want to play for Matt Patricia?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's it. Absolutely. Okay, let's go to recruiting. Now, Baylor's always had some success on the recruiting side, but are there anybody coming in on the recruiting side that you see could be an impact as a true freshman?
I would say there's two in mind, and I'll give you an offense and a defensive example here. Kamaria Morgan on defense at the edge coming in is a guy who can really wreak havoc this year. Obviously, it's going to be a rotational opportunity for him, but when he gets his time to shine, I think he's the guy that can make some noise on defense as a younger guy. And then on offense, Taz Williams at the receiver position is just an elite offensive specimen. He can make any catch on the field. He's really big. He's really fast. And I think you're going to see him become arguably one of Baylor's better receivers, that they can keep him here in the future. We know with the portal and everything, but if they can keep him here, he's one to keep an eye on as the years progress.
Yeah, and that could be, I never even thought about too. There's some guys like that could move out and do stuff like that, especially if Sawyer Robinson gets drafted or leaves, and you've got your quarterback you're used to. There may be an opportunity. NIL's crazy these days too. How has the NIL been at Baylor? You got some good backing there and some stuff?
Yeah, so they do a really good job with GXG Elite. It was one of those things where Baylor, when everything shifted towards an NIL pay for play scenario, they were kind of slow to it later, whereas Texas Tech jumped all on it. Texas jumped all on it. Baylor played it a little more cautious, and I think it hindered them really because you came off of that Big 12 championship run when you beat Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl, and you really didn't take advantage of that success in the portal, and you didn't take advantage with getting good recruits through NIL. It was more of that Dave Aranda doing the person over player philosophy, and it kind of bit him. And then he shifted the whole mindset to we pay players, and then they started getting the guys coming in, and then right now you're seeing it where they figured it out. They got the good backing. They don't have the deep pockets like a Texas or an A&M, or they don't have Cody Campbell money like Lubbock, but they can compete with most people in the Big 12 or be better than a lot of the programs in the conference if you're looking at an NIL perspective.
Yeah, and Baylor isn't, when it comes to Big 12 and at Southwest Conference going back before that, look, they used to compete for championships. Now not every year. I mean, Grant Taft had some success there in those years. Look what Matt Rule did, and then look what Dave Aranda did the first year. When Dave Aranda did it, there was still Texas and OU in the conference.
Yep.
When he had that success that year. So this isn't some, Baylor isn't the bottom rung of a conference, say a Kansas. I'm not trying to throw Kansas under the bus, but on football wise, you don't think of Kansas as a powerhouse or something like that. Baylor's got resources that they can turn to. And, I think what Rule did and now Aranda coming in has been amazing after that whole scandal that happened before that Matt Rule was one of the best jobs I've ever seen coming in after what that mess was and what he did with that program.
No, he really was.
Yeah. And now Aranda's just kind of picked it. It made that job attractive.
No, he did. And I think a lot of that credit gets lost to the shuffle. You got to look at how Jim Grobe handled it and did that bridge from the Corral staff into what Matt Rule was able to do. And that's the unique thing about Mac Rose, the AD, and how he approaches coaching jobs is like, he's not going to hire who you think he is or who's going to be the most popular. He's got guys off the radar. Like Matt Rule, nobody expected this guy from the Northeast to come from Philly to Waco and just make it work. Nobody expected Dave Aranda to come over from LSU after winning a national championship. You expected somebody else. So I think he does a really good job of evaluating. And Baylor, it's perfectly located. Like you can get to Houston for talent, Dallas for talent. There's talent around here as well. And they just finally have the backing behind it and the support that was kind of missing there for a while. But it's all starting to come together, and it makes it an intriguing place to play.
Yeah, it certainly does. Now, let's look at the 25 schedule. Now, I have a prediction. We're not going to show that yet. We're going to show it blanked out so you and I can kind of go over key games where you see that at. So here's where they go. They're going to start at Auburn on August the 29th, but let's look at this schedule. What do you see as key games in this schedule, whether it's a win or loss or whatever, going into the season?
The key games to me are the first 3 of the 4. When you look at that Auburn game at home, Baylor fans have been waiting a long time for a blue blood non-conference opponent to show up in Waco and play. There have just been a lot of games. You tried it with Utah, you tried it with BYU, and they packed out. Their fans traveled well, especially that BYU game. But a blue blood program like Auburn coming into Waco is very crucial. I think you already are in a position where if you're Baylor, you don't get an SEC or Big Ten bias from the media, whether they want to admit it or not. Like, you have to go and win this game. And I don't think you got to just win this game. I think you got to convincingly beat Auburn by at least 10 points. And then you get SMU on the road next. Well, SMU, that's big not only for what it means ACC. This is a team that was in a playoff last year, but this is a recruiting battle that is Dallas to Waco. Like, you're battling it out for the same kids. So I think getting that win is crucial. And then Arizona State there on the 20th. I don't know how many teams are playing this type of non-conference schedule. You have 2 playoff teams and then an SEC blue blood right there out of the gate. So you're going to learn a lot about Baylor. I think they have an opportunity to make themselves a legitimate playoff contender after that Arizona State team, or a team where you're thinking, okay, Dave Aranda's got to go. Like, you've got to come out of here 3-1 or better.
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at this. So what is your best case scenario for the season? Obviously, everybody can say 12-0, but realistically, what do you see as a best case scenario?
Honestly, I think 11-1 would be your best case scenario. I don't think
Yep.
you run through here undefeated. Like you're going to slip up. So there's going to be attrition. Something's going to happen. You are not going to go undefeated. I don't think you're going to see very many undefeated teams in general across the nation anymore. I think
don't
that's
either.
something that it's just in the past. I think you're regularly going to see teams with 2 to 3 losses competing to get into the playoff. I think that's just kind of the new world we're in. But best case scenario, I would go 11-1.
What's your worst case?
7-5. You cannot go worse than 7-5, or this is a complete failure of a season, given everything you've done, all the returning starters. You haven't had this type of talent together in quite some time. You cannot be worse than 7-5.
Okay, that's interesting. Here's where I went. I did not go there. I went a little worse, but that's okay. Look, I'm learning more and more about it. What you've said to me, I labor on this. I look at what other teams think. I didn't just go, okay, I'm going to think that's a win-loss.
Right.
I did my homework. I looked what predictors said, who they thought would be this. I ended up 6-6.
Okay.
Now, that Auburn, SMU, and ASU, like you said, let me tell you what, you beat Auburn, which they can, especially with a returning quarterback, that can roll a whole new thing. I mean, it's like anything. We did a Texas show. I'm not going to say what my prediction was on there because of what happened, but that first win over Ohio State, as long as it's or a win or loss, either way, I don't think it makes a difference unless it's a blowout. Let's say Ohio State blew out Texas or Texas blew out Ohio State. Other than that, it doesn't hurt them, but boy, a win could really get a roll. You know what I'm saying? You build a lot of confidence going. Beating Auburn, who, by the way, a lot of people have as a dark horse in the SEC with some talent coming back there. Now they've got, what's his name, the OU transfer playing quarterback. He's playing quarterback now. Let's see. I mean, look, he didn't have great success at OU, but sometimes it's a change of scenery, and that's all you need. Houston, for example, has Connor Weigman coming over. That's another one. So I said 6-6. I could easily see this changing over to 9-3 or 9-2 or 9-3 real quick, 8-4, and even 10-2, like you said. But 11-1's not ridiculous, and it wouldn't surprise me because I learned more from hearing you say that, especially what they're doing, what they got coming back in the backfield and the wide receiver scoring some points, and a quarterback we know can play.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, absolutely. If they went 6-6, I could see it, but I just think that's just pushing it a little too far.
Okay.
I think the Kansas State game will be intriguing because Kansas State always gives them trouble. I think you're going to see them really make up ground on the back half of that schedule there. Utah, I could see them losing to Utah. I think Devin Dampier and what he can do in that offense, after talking to Kyle Whittingham at Big 12 Media Days, he says this is the best offensive line he's had in his 19 or 20 years there, which is insane to think about. I could see them losing that game. I don't know who UCF is. I don't think Scott Frost is going to last there very long, especially just kind of mingling with him. Cincinnati's intriguing. I think Cincinnati is a dark horse in the Big 12. Scott Satterfield knows something that we don't know. And you have a Brendan Sorsby back and Dante Corleone on the defense. I think Cincinnati's going to surprise some people this year. And then TCU with the loss there, I absolutely could see them losing to TCU. Like the fact that they even beat them last year is a miracle. They never beat TCU. And they're so similar in styles. I know that sounds weird, but like they get the same type of player. They do a lot of the same stuff offensively, like with what Spavital does and what Kendall does. It's very similar. You look at the defense, and you even brought Paul Gonzalez over from TCU to help coach on the Baylor side this year. So, and the whole TCU staff is the former Baylor staff from the Browse era. So there's so many similarities there. I think Josh Hoover's an elite quarterback. So that game honestly is going to be a lot of fun, but I could see that one going either way. Samford's one where you got to win, but they have a really explosive offense that could cause some trouble. I mean, I think they could probably score a couple of touchdowns on Baylor. That's nothing to be ashamed of there. Oklahoma State, like typically anytime you think of going to Stillwater, you think, damn, like this is going to be tough, but who are they anymore? I think
no kidding.
I think Gundy's done as a coach. You have to replace your whole freaking staff. Like the quarterbacks, you have no returning production at quarterback. So going to Stillwater is not difficult anymore. But I really do. I think Baylor can come. I have them going 8-4.
Okay.
But I could see where you're going with 6-6.
Yeah, and I tell you what, and I want to be very clear to Baylor fans, and I say this to everyone, especially in the state of Texas, when I say this. I make fun of the Aggies because I'm a UT fan, and of course you're OU, and I love going banter back and forth on all of that. I want, whether it's the Sun Belt Conference, whether it's the Conference USA, the AAC, I want the Big 12 to have a Texas school win the Big 12. I want people, this show needs everybody in the state of Texas to be good. I would love to see 11-1 Baylor. I'm serious.
Right.
I want to see it. I want to see them in the CFP. I want to see Tech in there if it's not Baylor or Houston or TCU. I don't want to see Arizona State and Kansas State again. I'm ready for these Texas schools to step up because the talent level, not at college, not only college, at the high school level, it is the number one high school level talent in the country. More kids come out of here and play for D1 schools than anywhere else. So I think that that's what I want to see. Yeah, you have a rival. You love to beat your rival. You want to see your rival go through that. But truthfully, it's better for me as a UT fan if OU and A&M are good. It's just better. Absolutely. It makes it better. So, it's fun to make fun of them because your fan bases don't like each other and you poke at each other, but I want to see Baylor do your 11-1. Now I have a prediction here. I hope to gosh I'm wrong on my prediction. Now that I'm hearing this, I feel a little better about it. 8-4. I think realistically 8-4, depending on where those losses are, you could be playing for a Big 12 championship. If you lose to SMU and Auburn and then get rolling, see what I'm saying? And then maybe lose one or two somewhere along there, you might be playing for the Big 12 championship at 8-4.
No, you really can. And then I think that kind of goes back into what we were talking about earlier with how the schedules fall, because your 8-4 could be, it depends on how it's going to stack up to somebody else's 8-4 or 7-5 there. But absolutely, they could get through here and lose those two non-con games. You could lose couple more conference games and make it. Yeah, absolutely, they could do that.
Yep. Well, man, this has been fantastic, Garrett. I appreciate you coming on. We wanted to, so every Monday when I do my show, it's just going to be me. It'll shuffle. Wherever the 13 are, they're going to shuffle every week as to how the results go. I do make a point for people that don't, and I keep reiterating it. If there are two teams with similar records and, one of them may have – Baylor might be at the time not be 6-3, and then someone like Houston might be 7 might be 7-1 or 2 or whatever it is, and people are going, well, how do you still have Baylor above Houston? My point goes, I always look at it this way. Me personally, if I put Baylor and Houston played each other 10 times, I would think Baylor would win at least 6 of those. That's the way I look at it. So in my opinion, I think Baylor's better. Now, if they were head-to-head and they lost and they were right there, you got an argument. If they haven't played yet and I'm saying something like that, that's where my point comes. There's a point where you get to the top of that thing, you say like A&M, SMU, and stuff like that at the top of my list. Right now, in my mind, I don't know. Both of those are good schools, but I may feel like maybe A&M's better and maybe their record isn't as good as SMU, or vice versa. I see it with SMU. So that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to be watching Baylor. Baylor's going to be a climber. They're not going to be at the bottom of my list. I've got them in there. I think they're going to compete, and now I'm feeling even better about them thanks to you.
Well, good, man. I'm looking forward to the season. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of great games in Waco. If you have an opportunity,
I may try to get down there and see if I can and get into one. We'll work it out. I tell you what we will do. If there's a big, so I said what Mondays are going to be. I'm going to try to scatter in this year too a big game. Let's say a Big 12 game's coming up, and Baylor's going to be playing maybe another Texas school or someone else, and it's going to be a big game. We may jump on midweek, do a quick 20 minutes, preview the game, do something like that. All right, guys, that's Garrett Ross. This has been another one in the can for Garrett Ross. I'm John Moore. Until the next one or the next show, guys, we'll see you at the gridiron.